right, welcome everybody. I'd like to open the general government meeting for April 4th, 2018. I would like to just extend a thank you to all of you who've come to attend today's meeting. We certainly appreciate having your participation and look forward to hearing from your input. And I want to say hello to all of our council members. It's good to see you too. It's been a beautiful day today.
Hi, Ashley.
Hi, Mayor. So we're just very happy to be here. We're going to go ahead and start with discussing the trash ordinance. And Dina, we'll go ahead and let you take the start on that.
Okay. Mayor, members of council, we are here to discuss the trash ordinance. So staff and the city attorney has been working on providing some updates and clarifications. So basically the draft that you have in your packet for the work session today is all of the clean language, basically every single word that is now being proposed for the trash ordinance. So I'll just walk through and update you with some of the key changes. So first, there were some global changes that were made, and I'll walk through that in a little bit more detail. Secondly, there were specific changes or clarifications made to residential zone districts. And lastly, changes to the commercial or industrial zone districts, which are termed non-residential in the ordinance. So first, the global changes. There were 3 global changes that were made from the current ordinance that was passed in December. The first thing is we added language accommodating recycling containers, and that's on page 1, basically in the definition of approved trash receptacle. So we just wanted to make sure that recycling containers, or that term was added in to make sure it was crystal clear what the expectations were for recycling containers versus, and trash containers. So we clarified that definition. The second thing is we added a definition of place of storage. That was something that came out in our last discussion. That seemed to be where some of the confusion was coming from, because we kept talking about place of collection. Right, so when the trash day is, where the trash can goes, but we didn't definitively define place of storage. So we've now defined place of storage. And then lastly, we added definitions in for residential zone district and non-residential zone district, which is also on page 2 of the ordinance, to make sure that it's very clear which zone districts were, in the context of this ordinance, we're calling residential zone districts and which ones are non-residential zone districts. So that's been clarified, and those are the global changes. So then moving into a little bit more detail. In the residential zone districts, in that language, which most of that is covered in section 060, which is on page 4 of the ordinance. Again, the term residential zone district basically means it's primarily residential in nature, right? It's primarily residential uses that are principally seen in that zone district. So the clarifications that we made there is, number 1, we are now allowing 2 cubic yard dumpsters in residential zone districts. So that was something that council had asked for. That's been added in, and that's on subsection A of 060, which again is on page 4 in your packet. The second thing that we've done is, in terms of place of storage for the dumpsters, we are not allowing them to be stored beyond the front facade of the principal structure, and that's in C in the ordinance. But the language that you have in front of you right now does allow 96-gallon containers or less to be stored in the front yard, so beyond the front facade of the principal structure. And what do we mean by that? So on the aerial that you have here, let's go back. So basically what we're talking about is in terms of beyond the front facade of the principal structure. If you look at the houses on the north side of the street here, if I can get say this stretch here, basically the area between this white line, which is the right-of-way line, and the front of the house would be that area that we're talking about. So basically that zone is where a dumpster would not be permitted to be stored. But right now, the language reads that you could store a 96-gallon container or less in that zone. So that's how the language reads currently. So just another example of that, the two houses that are a little bit further east on that block are set back a little bit further. So again, in that case, that datum point is the front facade of the house. So they have a deeper front yard. So the dumpster would not be able to be stored in that zone, but they could store a 96-gallon container or less in that zone, the way this reads. Just moving a little bit further west, another example with some of the older, smaller lots in the community that are alley loaded. Again, that front yard condition and language is the same in that case because these are the residential zone districts. So then number 4 on kind of the key revisions or clarifications are place of storage exemptions. And there's 2 types of exemptions that are allowed or potentially allowed in the residential zone district. The first one is if somebody is physically unable to move a trash receptacle, and they can get an exemption for that by virtue of coming in to City Hall and filling out basically an affirmation form. So the onus is on them to fill out that form and say, I'm physically unable to basically move my trash receptacle from place of storage to place of collection and back and forth. So that would be done by virtue of an affirmation form that they would fill out and submit to us. The second type of exemption is for unique property conditions. So let's say there's a ditch immediately on the side of the house or the front of the house or the side of the house, and the house is very close to the ditch and they're not able to store the trash container on the side of the house. That staff would administratively look at that and look at the unique physical conditions, and staff could administratively grant an exception to the location requirements for physical conditions. So that's the second type of possible exemption in a residential zone district. Number 5 is that there's no trash receptacles, place of storage in the public right-of-way. And that's basically consistent between the residential zone districts and the non-residential zone districts, that we're not going to allow place of storage, meaning regular storage of those receptacles, to be anywhere in a right-of-way excepting alleys, and we've had that discussion before. And then this isn't really a change, but just to make sure that you're aware, again, that there's no screening requirements for residential zone districts for trash receptacles, so no screening from a public right-of-way. So then, just going through some imagery. So in terms of an allowable trash receptacle in a residential zone district, including that allowable dumpster, these are all okay. So basically, so this is nothing about placement. I'm just doing the receptacle type for this slide. So this is a 2 cubic yard dumpster, and as is this. So these would both be okay in a residential zone district, as would a typical 96-gallon container, which is often provided by trash companies. And we've seen plenty of examples where folks can actually use your own smaller trash receptacles as well. So those are all allowable trash receptacles in residential zone districts. So now, this next slide, these would not be allowed. So these are dumpsters that are larger than 2 cubic yards. So in terms of an approved trash receptacle, this is not an allowed or approved trash receptacle in a residential zone district because it's too large of a dumpster. So now moving on to place of storage, right? We added that definition of place of storage so that we could be very clear. So we've already talked about this is a no-no. We're not going to allow any place of storage in the public right-of-way. This is also a no-no, right? We've said no dumpsters to be stored in the front yard or beyond that front facade of the principal structure. So that's a no. And plus it's basically on the sidewalk and impeding the sidewalk as well, which is a no-no. That's part of the right-of-way. This is a yes. You know, you're alley loaded, you can have those trash receptacles, and you can have the 2 cubic yard dumpster in the alley and in the right-of-way portion of the alley, as long as it's not impeding the flow of travel, right? We need to make sure that the trash trucks can get through and cars can get through. So just a few more on place of storage. Again, this is an alley here on the right side of the slide. This is a yes, right, because it's basically a trash receptacle off of an alley. It would be fantastic if, we could get them to tuck it behind the garage a little bit, but technically this would be allowed. And this is a no for various reasons that I mentioned before. It's in the right-of-way, which is a no-no. Even if it was pushed back a little bit more and that was the front yard, that would also be a no-no.
Dina,
Yep.
can you go back? You mentioned that the 96-gallon was allowed because it was by the alley, but it's actually allowed because it's in a residential district.
Right, we're talking about place of storage
Right.
now, not the
But-
container type.
Right, but it can be anywhere off of the right-of-way. A 96.
Right,
Okay.
yep. So in terms of place of collection, we've talked about the fact that these are not allowed to be stored in the public right-of-way, so they have to be moved back and forth. So in terms of place of collection, if somebody does have a dumpster, you move it in the right-of-way, you put it adjacent to the curb or the flow line is the best place to have that because it's out of the travel way of the street. It's not on a sidewalk. That is a travel way of a right-of-way as well. So that would be an appropriate location for place of collection. And again, the same thing with along the alley. So then we've gone through the first two categories, and then lastly, I'll just walk through some of the clarifications or revisions in the commercial and industrial zoned areas, which again in the ordinance is termed non-residential zone districts. So we have included the every effort language in for screening of trash receptacles in those zone districts. The place of storage for a dumpster is not allowed beyond the front facade of the principal structure. We do allow, again, an exemption for place of storage requirements, which would be an administrative review. And as in the residential zone districts, we do not allow place of storage in a right-of-way. And so these are just two examples of on the right is an appropriate location because it's along the side of the building, not beyond the front facade of the principal structure. And the one on the left will be a no-no because that's the front yard of the property.
Dean, excuse me, what do you think, you say number 3, allow for exemption to place of storage requirements, administrative review. What do you think that exemption would look like? Can you give me an idea?
So from a commercial standpoint, I mean, I guess a similar example to the residential, where, maybe most of our commercial structures are, have been in place for a while in the community, and they might have a tighter setback or no side setback, and there might not actually be room to put the dumpster around the side of the building. Or let's say that the building is adjacent again to a ditch, and very close to that ditch, and the ditch drops off, there might not be room again to put that along the side yard of the principal structure. So that would be another example where that business owner or property owner would have to come in and ask for an administrative exception because of physical conditions of the property.
Could you put some kind of requirements on that, or would you do that?
We could. So let's say, and I just reread the language as it reads in the code. So we could look at that situation and say, gee, okay, we understand that it's really tough for you you're not going to be able to get it around the side of the building or in the back of the building. We'll allow you to have it in the front yard, but it has to be kept up against the building.
So I know the one where the no is, I know what building that is, and I don't know if they could get it alongside the building.
Exactly, yep.
So, okay,
Yep.
all right, thanks.
So, and then this isn't anything new or different, just a reminder again that we do have language in this code for use of construction dumpsters, and that those are allowed with a permit to be placed in the public right-of-way. And again, this is a yes, but sort of, please don't block the sidewalk. So just a reminder on, we do allow those use of construction dumpsters, of which for use for construction, that may also include a smaller business-sized dumpster like the picture on the right indicates. And there even is a provision in the code that says you can have a dumpster on a property, I think, for up to 30 days with no permit for purposes of cleanup. So I think that's it.
Thank you, Dina, and I really appreciate that this ordinance has been really cleaned up and it's really simplified and easier to read. Are there any questions from council members? We'll start with Dolly.
Thank you, Dina, for putting that together. My question is, will this information be presented to the trash companies so they know where to place these dumpsters when they're being dropped off?
We can go back and do another presentation. Code enforcement had gone out in January.
Okay.
And did a presentation on the existing ordinance, and they can certainly do that again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. John?
John, go.
Okay, just a suggestion, and you may want to ping the attorneys on this one to see what they say, but under definitions of trash, you may want to include household waste as a category, and the reason for that is because of the waste regulations that the EPA has promulgated. Household waste is a category, and so I'm not wedded to that. I mean, you might ask, see what they feel, see whether you like that idea or not, but you might consider adding household waste there.
Okay?
And then talking about the construction dumpsters, and I'm looking at 816-080B. And that's on page 6, thank you.
Mhm.
I wrote over the page number. So the last sentence there, it says, all such construction dumpsters must be emptied or removed within 24 hours of becoming full. Okay, so if you've got a project where someone is filling the dumpster and they call the trash company to come empty the container, but the trash company doesn't do it, and code enforcement says, uh-oh, this is a violation, who gets the violation? And so what I suggest, I have a suggestion here, is that this read that either the project person or the property owner must request within 24 hours of it becoming full to be emptied, and that you consider adding then in a requirement for trash haulers that once they receive a request to empty a construction dumpster, that they have to do so within, should it be 1 business day? I mean, they don't haul on Sundays and stuff like that, right?
And
So-
I think just saying that they have to call within 24 hours is sufficient. And if it's a problem with
I'm good with
companies,
that.
because usually companies, they are pretty responsible of being attentive.
I'm good with that, but it might be, rather than 24 hours, it might be a business day or something like that. Because if you call on Friday afternoon, it may sit there all weekend.
But then they would still be calling within 24 hours.
Yeah, they
So,
would have called, yes,
At
that's
least,
true.
if there's a voice
Yeah.
message left, then
Mhm.
they've done their duty.
Couldn't we just add, with the exception of holidays and weekends? And that would take care of the 24-hour problem. See, so like if it happens to come on a Thursday, 24 hours is going to be Friday, stuff like that. I think that would be the simplest thing to do, just eliminate holidays and weekends. Or put it onto there.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
good with that.
so we can look at that language, and the attorney is on the phone, so.
Okay, and I also have one other comment. And so on the construction dumpster right there, on the yes with a permit, it shows the large capacity dumpster out in the street, essentially in a parking space. So it's not obstructing traffic. But I would point out that on page 7, number 2B, it says it has to be placed in a manner, cannot be placed in a manner that obstructs any sidewalk, intersection, crosswalk, or otherwise obstructs vehicle or pedestrian traffic. And so I'm just thinking about that that's permitted there. That's all right. I mean, having it in a parking space is fine from our thinking, but those words seem to prohibit that. And so
No, I don't, I mean, it says traffic. I mean, if you
Traffic.
take the word traffic as traveled way
Traveled way.
versus
Okay.
parking
All
zone
right.
or parking lane,
Yeah.
I think we're fine.
Good. And one other thing,
I'm not sure he's aware that that says with a permit.
with the permit.
In order to place that dumpster there, you actually have to apply with a permit to
Yes.
get that dumpster placed there.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not by right.
Not by right, yes. And also, I'd like to say, hey, Dina, if you did the work on this, thank you. I think you did a heck of a job. It's really great, looks really tight. And I think it's from my expectation, looks really good.
Thank you.
Jim, do you still have questions?
On the first page where you describe a business dumpster, it says it's having a capacity of 96 gallons or less, but equal to 3 cubic yards.
Right. So
Then
business,
when you go on to talk about business dumpsters as being, or dumpsters allowed, we talk about 2.
right.
That seems.
So in the definition sections, we have basically 3 sizes of trash receptacles, 96 gallons or less, between 96 gallons and 3 cubic yards, those are business dumpsters, and then greater than 3 cubic yards, which are considered construction dumpsters. But what we've done is within the residential zone district, we've said you can have a business dumpster, but no more than 2 cubic yards.
Okay. I don't like that, but I'll buy it.
Any other questions?
Dean, I had one, talking about placement there. If the placement is put in the right of way, is the company that's put out the dumpster the one that's going to be issued the citation?
If it's in the right of way and they don't have a permit and it's not placed in the right location, then yes, they would, from what I
Okay,
understand.
as opposed to the homeowner?
Well, it would be, yeah, I mean, I'm presuming it's mostly the trash companies that would be applying for the permit. That process goes
Okay.
through the city engineer.
Okay.
So,
So in that particular instance, who would have applied for the permit, the homeowner or the trash company?
it
Either one.
could be either, really.
Because one of the problems that's going to happen with construction companies, which we already know happened up in Dawson Ranch, is that the trash company will place the dumpster on the lot, and then the construction company will temporarily move the dumpster for a project, and then not move it back.
Mm.
How is that handled?
We'll have to just look at that on a case-by-case basis. I mean, if somebody notices, something getting moved and say a contractor moves it and it's now blocking the sidewalk, then, and code enforcement notices that, or somebody calls it in, then we'll follow up on it.
Yeah, in that particular case, the contractor would have been cited for moving it into the public right-of-way and leaving it there.
Okay, but that's not the message that was conveyed by our code enforcement. And that's another issue, but
We'll follow up on that.
If there's a particular case example, I'd like to speak with you about that, and we can follow up on that one.
well, it's already taken care of, but code enforcement said that they would ticket both people. They would ticket the construction company and the trash company. And I confirmed that with Tony, and he said that would in fact be the case.
We have that option. But generally, that's not what we would do. We would cite one party, the party that placed it there and left it there.
Go ahead, Jim.
Extremely good job. And that presentation, I think, is a really good format in terms of educating some of us dummies here. It just does a really good job of visually explaining some of the issues, and I commend you for that presentation and the simplicity of this document. Thank you.
It just didn't have red lines.
Well, the red line does get confusing for some in terms of what gets changed,
Yeah.
but
Yep.
I commend you for the job that you've done. It's very good.
Okay, I have some comments. I think it's good ordinance. I've read it, but I have a concern that when's it going to come to city council for approval or denial?
And bring it to you on the 16th.
I don't agree with that. I think this should wait at least 90 days so the public actually can look at it, because I think the city does it backwards. We go ahead and bring it to city council, it now becomes the law, and then it's publicized in the paper. It gets a little backwards. I'm not assured, and I'm gonna have to have better assurance before I'm gonna allow it come, that the trash contractors and the people have had time to contact, to talk about it and look at it. And the same way with the public. That's who we work for, the public. So I think any ordinance anymore that comes to this council should have a seasoning time of a minimum of 90 days. Because I'm getting a little sick and tired of the public saying they didn't hear about it, they didn't see about it. And that's because we bring it to the council, and then we approve it, and then we publicize it, here's your law. Does that seem right to you guys on council?
The process.
No, I'm not, just let the council answer. Do you seem right, does that seem right to
Well,
council?
it's usually by second reading when they become.
By
after
second
first
reading, and then
First
guess
reading, they
what?
become aware, and then by second reading, we address.
And then you have a 2-week notice between the two. That's not enough time.
I'm okay with giving more time. 90 days seems a little.
Well,
I don't
think
have a
so.
problem with that, but I think 90 days is far too long, okay? 30 days, I would think would be maximum if we're gonna do that.
Well, why-
But 90 days is gonna be there because we could have problems with that. You showed it to somebody not here, and then 30 days later, they forgot what you said, and another 30 days later, they forgot. I
Well,
don't
I'm
have a
not-
problem, but 90 days, I think, is too long.
I'm not going to argue with you, but let's let the public tell us what they think. And I think we ought to give them time to do that.
Do we
That's all I'm
have any
saying.
comments from the audience concerning the trash ordinance itself?
I'm good.
We'll put it out in public and at least give it 30 days, and we'll hear, you're going to hear from it. My phone's been ringing since last Monday night.
And what are their
That's
concerns?
all I'm saying. Not about the trash ordinance, about what we did Monday night. What I'm saying is, go ahead and just wait. We don't have to bring it to the next council meeting like the administrator said. Why don't we wait 30 days?
I can agree to 30 days.
Okay. Go
I was gonna
ahead.
say, we have a.
All right, go ahead. You need to come up to the podium and give your name and address, please.
While she's walking up, I think generally where we run into the problem is we implement a new ordinance, and when code enforcement goes out and starts the review process, that's where many people realize that there was a change. Because if I weren't involved in council, I don't know that I would know this much, because I've got other things going on in my life until code enforcement shows up and says, hey, you can't do that. I'm going, when did that change? So some of that happens through enforcement.
And maybe there's a hybrid. Maybe we could do like a 30-day seasoning and then 30 to 60 days of code enforcement, just issuing verbal warnings of just saying, hey, you know, we're not gonna cite for 90 days from
I like that.
inception, but just to give you a heads up, within the next 60 days, this is going to become a violation.
I like
So I'd
that.
be in favor of that if it didn't even come to council for 90 days. Let the public take a look at it. And again, we keep forgetting who's paying us and who is the boss here, and it's the public, and the public doesn't get a proper notification, in my opinion.
Well, as much as we put into social media, newspaper, radio, PSAs, it doesn't matter how much we get out there. We'll always
Well,
have
let's
a
just try it.
demographic that say they.
Why don't you
they
try it
don't.
and see what happens?
Okay, we'll give it 30 days, and then we'll start with warning
Okay.
notifications.
I
Go from
don't think
there.
it's enough, but
Let's go ahead and
fine.
hear from our audience.
Thank you. My name is Kathy Madonna. I live in Lincoln Park. I am not part of the Canyon City, but I do appreciate you wanting to give the public an opportunity to know what's going on. There is so much going on. It's hard to keep track. We need to have this brought to our attention. You all are making decisions on a lot of people's part, even though we are not in the city. So I do appreciate and agree with not necessarily the 90 days, that might be a little bit too long, but appreciate the idea that giving us the opportunity to know what these ordinances include.
And I would like to also say, for those who do want to be apprised of what's happening in Canyon City, the latest things going on, the best thing to do is to get on our website and go to alerts, and you can sign in with your email, and you'll be given emails regularly on what's happening in Canyon City, so you can stay abreast of the latest issues, and if something comes up that you want to comment on, you know about it. So the citizens have some responsibility.
How's that worked out in the last few times? Huh?
I'm just saying, citizens also have responsibility.
I know
of
they
staying
do
in tune with
too.
what's
Let's give them
happening in their
time.
community.
There's no compelling safety issue for this. It's a great ordinance. I think it's fine. All I'm saying is give them more time. They're the people that should be in charge. Hasn't worked real well in the past.
All right, Mayor.
Okay.
So we're going to try 30 days, and I suggest that we do some public service announcements, talk to the trash companies, put it on Facebook, and do that, so
Yeah,
that we
we
have an
can do
opportunity
that,
for
which is
feedback.
what we did in January as well. So I'll have it coming back for May 7th for the first reading. And then we can amend the effective date, or we can change the effective date, but just know that code enforcement will basically have about 45, 60 days after it's adopted to give notices, and that's what they were working on in terms of a rollout with the existing ordinance.
Okay. So we're going to be looking at this again in about okay. After the notice time is done, then we'll bring it to council on a Monday night. We do appreciate being cleaner. I would like to point out, maybe in a bigger picture, that cleaning up the aesthetics of our city is an economic development issue in many ways. I've tried to do a lot of research and lots of documented studies show that even the little things that you do to help the city to look better, it promotes potential businesses, it welcomes our visitors, and helps people who are here want to stay and live. And also has shown in many cases a reduction in crime as well. And even studies show that even street sweeping reduces crime. And so those little things, even those little things that we do to clean up our city, it makes a difference in many aspects, not just for the neighbors to be happy to have a cleaner neighborhood.
Stupid question. Are we back to first reading?
Yes.
Because we wiped the other one, right?
We're starting basically with a new ordinance.
Okay.
We'll be repealing the current 8.16 and adopting a new .816 with a 2018 ordinance number.
Okay, so I have noted changes from John. Are there any other concerns? I think today's the day to air those concerns on the ordinance, so when it does come to Monday that we're good to go.
And I appreciate the two variants of verbiages or terminologies that you've used to address those unique circumstances. I think that addresses my concerns from that standpoint. Thank you.
All right. So I guess we're ready to move on to the Black Hills franchise process. Before we get started on the discussion of the Black Hills franchise, Catherine, are you there, our attorney?
I am.
Catherine, I thought it might be good to start our discussion, first of all, delineating between what the city can do with the franchise agreement and what we cannot do, because I think that'll be important in our conversation that we have.
Okay, so I think, I don't know if the matrix was available to the public, but
We have it
council has a
available.
matrix in front of them regarding what the city can control in relationship to Black Hills and what the PDC controls in relationship to Black Hills. And to back up a little bit, the franchise is really a giant right-of-way permit. It governs how Black Hills operates on city property. And so it's really just an agreement regarding that. It doesn't address the rates that Black Hills charges, any kind of deposits, fees, anything like that, or really how it provides services to the customer. The city operates under that franchise agreement as the owner of real property. Otherwise, the city is just a customer of Black Hills like everyone else. And so that delineation is really important to understand when having conversations about a franchise and the disposition of the utility and high rates or high deposit fees and those kinds of things, and things like renewable energy. That's really something handled at the CUC. And the city can certainly participate in those activities, but only as a customer.
And Catherine, can you speak a little bit louder? We're having a hard time hearing you.
Sorry. Is that better?
That's much better.
Okay. Sorry about that. So what I was saying was basically is that the city is operating in the owner of real property under the franchise agreement and has little to no control over the rates and charges and deposits and the operation of Black Hills as an energy provider. It's simply allowing Black Hills to operate within its right-of-way property and regulates that, and that's what the franchise agreement does. So the city has limited authority as to any issue regulated by the PUC, little to no authority, I would say.
Are there any questions from council concerning the authority of the city and the franchise agreement? Okay, then we'll move on to Ryan. Thank you, Catherine. And Ryan, can you begin the discussion?
Yeah, Councilwoman Smith, we do have some representatives of Black Hills here, I'd like to bring them up to the table so they can answer questions as they come available.
I think that's fantastic. You guys are welcome to come on up. We do want to extend appreciation for Black Hills representatives to be here.
Great.
Just go ahead and take a seat by Ryan. Make sure your mics are on.
Well, good afternoon, Mayor and City Council. Certainly appreciate the opportunity to come here. I wasn't intending to talk about the franchise agreement. We're going to provide some, some updates. I think there were some questions on reliability we were going to share, and we'll give it the best shot on the franchise agreement. And so I guess just in general, definitely, you said thanks for being here. We appreciate the opportunity to be here, Mayor and Councilwoman and the rest. And I guess I would say there's no comments or no questions are off the table. I'm new here. I came here to Colorado late last year, and I'm starting to transition now from kind of the listening and learning to making some changes within our business. So I'm kind of here on a personal reason, if you will, kind of a choice to come down, seeing what was happening in Colorado and specifically Pueblo, and just wanted to come down here and see if the team, we could make some changes and have a improved partnership with all the communities that we serve in.
Just for a sec, can I get both of your names for our
I'm
public
sorry,
record?
my name is Vance Crocker. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Black Hills Energy, and I'm headquartered in Pueblo, Colorado.
And I'm Mark Trevithick, Manager of Operations. I'm also located in Pueblo.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So just a little bit about Black Hills Energy and maybe a little bit of history. We purchased the utility from the Aquila company back in 2008, and over the last 10 years we've made a pretty significant amount of investment, not only in late technology, natural gas, but also a lot in the infrastructure. When we took over, we found from a reliability perspective especially, there was a pretty big need to make a lot of investments in the system to kind of get our reliability up. Today, as we sit here, we've had a lot of investment in the system. We'll talk about reliability. We do have some issues we'll address, but overall our reliability is actually really good as compared to the rest of the industry. And the other thing is we've got the essentially the newest and most cleanest energy generation fleet actually in the state. So we don't have any coal on our system. WN Clark was the latest plant that was shut down, and as you all are aware, we're looking at working through with your staff actually as late as today to get some of that property transferred over to the city for your use. So we're excited about that, and it sounds like that would be a pretty big value and use for the city. I mentioned that I'm relatively new, came here late last year with my family, and really one of my goals is to look at our communities that we serve as a whole and look at how do we change how we partner with our communities and serve our communities. And that's something important to our company, and it's something that's really important to me personally. So what does that mean to a city council like you all? It means we've got to look at how do we maintain stable rates, moving forward. We've made a lot of investment, and we've got to do everything we can to make sure we maintain stable rates. Reliability is important. We find customers, whether it's a business or a residential customer, reliability is really important. It's like in the top 2 or 3 things that's important. So that's a focus. And then the other thing is whether we're serving a customer or working with a community, we want to make it easy to do business with our company. So those are some things that, you know, that we're working at making some changes. We got more work to do, but those are things we're doing. So how does that translate into actionables? You know, one thing is delivering the tax benefits to our customers. We have something, you know, you talked about the PUC. We have something in front of the Public Utilities Commission right now to give back us annually $6 million to our customers every year, and that's essentially into perpetuity. And just to compare that magnitude-wise, the rate increase that we had last year was about 1.1 million. So this rate relief or this corporate tax benefit is, you know, is over 5 times that amount. And yes, we have something in front of the Public Utilities Commission, but everything that I've heard since I've been here in the first short few months, that was really my only option, to look at folks like you in the eye and say, we've got to give that all back to our customers. And I know if you look across the U.S., not all businesses or utilities are giving that back. So that's definitely going to be important for our customers. The other thing I heard a lot about was some of the reconnection fees that we had and the arrears for disconnects, and I heard about that, and we put together a team, and we said we've got to do something about that. We've got to make it easier. If a customer, you know, doesn't pay their bill, we need to make it easier and take away obstacles, give them some hope on making it easier to reconnect on service. And the team worked really hard on that, and we implemented that effective April 1st. So instead of a typical customer having to pay like an average of 90 days worth of bills to get reconnected, now it's 30 days, so essentially 1 month, and then we're allowing them to spread that out over a 4-month period. So trying to make it easier for our customers, and kind of like that theme of, you know, how can we take away a burden and make it easier for our customers? So that's something we're doing. And then probably the last thing is it's a fancy and it's a complicated word, but we call it the Phase 2 rate design, and that's in front of the Public Utilities Commission right now. And that's been something that has been ongoing since actually last summer. And I know when it's looked at in the media, it sounds like it's another rate hike or it's another rate increase. But really what it is the PUC required us to file this Phase 2. Again, it's a reallocation, it's a rate redesign, and so what it does is it takes our entire cost of service, not just the small increase last year, but our entire cost, which is a very big number, and they reallocate that. They require us to reallocate that to all the customer classes. So what happens is there can be a shift from one customer class to the other customer class, and the intent is to make sure each customer class, like a residential, street light, commercial, large industrial, that they're kind of picking up what they call their fair share of the costs. There's no new revenue for Black Hills Energy in that rate redesign or reallocation, but there's some customers that can have a decrease, and others can have an increase just based on that reallocation. So again, it's been in process since summer of 2017, and I think there are going to be some good things that are going to come out of that actually. There are going to be some customers that are going to see a decrease in their cost, their cost of service, but there's the demand charge, which has been brought up quite a bit. That demand charge is for a couple classes of customers, commercial, is actually going to go away, and that'll be reflected in the energy charge. So I think there's going to be some businesses that are going to like that, appreciate that, and I think even though the energy charge will go up, I think that's an opportunity for us to work with some of those customers, whether it's with solar or other options, to help mitigate some of those changes. So those are some things that we are
Excuse me, are you
working on right now.
saying for the commercials that their energy charge could go up, but the demand charges are?
The
being-
demand charge could actually, the PUC is recommending that demand charge completely go
be
away.
Completely
Yeah,
gone, okay.
yeah. So what that means, Councilwoman, is they'll require that to go into what we call the energy charge, or the dollars per kilowatt hour. So that will go up to make up the difference. And then that's an opportunity for energy outreach, conservation, other things to help those customers. So it could be a win-win for customers. So I think that's a good thing. And then with residential customers, as an example, there's going to be a tiered rate. So that means that, you know, the more you use up to a certain level, that energy charge can be higher. The good thing about that is that will incentivize customers to conserve energy, you know, whether it's replacing light bulbs in their house or doing weatherization. So better opportunities, I think, to help the customers on their energy bills. So I think that can be a good thing. But it's a complicated process. It's been going on a long time, and I know when you read the newspaper, sometimes it'll say rate, you know, Black Hills has another rate hike, and that's just not the case on that.
So, Mr. Crocker, when
Yes,
you
sir.
say the demand charge is going away for commercial, will the net benefit be in the positive or negative to the customer? I mean, if it's just a
Yeah.
reallocation, they're going to have the same bill, we're just calling it something different.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's going to be some customers where their overall cost, based on how they use energy, and we're working through the analysis right now, but based on how they use energy, they will actually save money. But there'll be some customers that maybe they can't control their energy, or the demand charge was actually good for them, and there are some classes of customers that are like that. Those are the customers that may feel a negative impact on that. But those are those customers that we need to be reaching out and figuring out how we can help them. So there'll definitely be some customers that are going to be winners on the reallocation.
You're saying that some customers, based on their energy use level, and you're still doing the study on it, but do you have a rough estimate of what type of business would be in the negative?
I think the customers that their demand is almost always up at a higher level, or at a constant level would. The customers, so that would be a negative. The customers that, you know, maybe it's a pottery, you know, they're firing pottery for 1/2 hour out of a day, or out of a week, or out of a month, and they just hit that demand charge for a short period of time. Those customers are going to be a benefit, and those are some of the customers that I personally heard from that get challenged with the demand charge.
Where would restaurants, I mean, most of our businesses downtown are, you know, stores that sell things, furniture, different things like that,
Yeah.
drugstores. We have a lot of restaurants. Where does the class of restaurants fall in what you've been talking about?
I don't know the answer to that. We could take a look at some typical customers and identify that. Right now, the challenge that we had is just today that the commission heard on the final hearing, and so there's still some things moving around with that, and we're hoping within the next week or two, we'll have clear information from the commission and hopefully a written order where we're already starting to do some analysis based on what we heard today. But it behooves us and our customers, to look at that and see, you know, who's being impacted and how we can help them.
Are there any other questions from council right now, or would you like to hear from the public?
I have a number of questions.
All right, go ahead, Jim.
When did our agreement expire with Canyon City?
November 2nd, Councilman.
I'm a little surprised that I'm able to personally meet somebody from Black Hills. I'm also appalled that it's taken this long for me to see face-to-face with somebody that has a franchise in this city, with somebody that we have been begging to do business with, in particular with the transfer of the property. It's taken this long for somebody to sit down face-to-face with this council or with any representatives from the city. So if I come across as having some arrogance or some pointedness, it's primarily because of that I'm not necessarily going to hold you responsible, but I will hold Black Hills responsible for the fact that you appear to be the most arrogant energy company in the world in terms of consideration for the people that you're supposed to serve. You're non-responsive to those people. You mentioned that you've done some improvements. Can you, and I realize this is off the cuff, but one of the things I would like to see is the amount of dollar improvement in utility equipment that you've done in Fremont County. The second thing I would like to see is you mentioned the importance of a partnership with the community. I would also like to see what kind of dollar investment Black Hills has done within Fremont County in terms of supporting whatever groups are within Fremont County and doing that prior to the renewal of the agreement.
And Jim, if I may, I think on the first number that Jim was talking about, Councilman Meisner, I think what council would be interested in are capital numbers, not necessarily maintenance or, but what type of capital
Yes.
numbers we're talking about there.
I would also, what's your current percentage of renewable energy?
19%. We are on track to get to 30% with our current renewable plan.
Where does that compare with other energy companies in Colorado?
I do not have, Excel would be probably the only other one that I'm aware of that would have public information. I do not have that. We are positioned pretty well. We've, like I said, we've got literally the cleanest and the newest fleet now in the state. Shut down, essentially our coal. And we are continuing to invest in renewables. We've got something in front of the Utilities Commission now for, an additional tranche of renewables to make sure that we meet the state mandate.
You mentioned that the deposit and reconnect charges and processes or charges are in the process of changing, and your article mentioned that was, I thought, was pending approval with the PUC. Has the PUC approved that new procedure?
That was something that the PUC did not need approval of. We looked at that and we just said it's something that our customers need and we're moving forward with that.
But hasn't, and I'm going to step out of the community, but hasn't the specific disconnect and reconnect charge been an issue in Pueblo for at least 5 years?
I believe it's been
A massive problem.
I believe it's been an issue for several years, yes,
That
sir.
you guys have not responded to until we get to a renewal stage with the city of Pueblo. I mean, it seems like you only want to respond as a company when you're backed in the corner, if you could ever be backed into a corner. And you're now presenting the deposit reconnect as a positive. It should have never been an issue to start with, that the people of Pueblo were trying to convince you of that a long time ago.
So, Councilman, if I could, respectfully respond to that, there have been folks that have said, it's because of the renewal of the franchise or the activities in Pueblo. And the reason I struggle with that is that really strikes at my personal integrity. I had been thinking about coming to Pueblo for about a year. You know, me personally and where I was at with the company, there'd be no reason I would ever, people looking from the outside, why in the world would Vance Crocker ever want to go to Pueblo, Colorado? It just wasn't in the cards for me from a corporate perspective. And I just felt a desire to come down on behalf of the employees, our community, and our customers. And that is why I came down, and those are the reasons. There's the franchise. I've told my team that we don't want to get distracted with the things that are happening with the city. This is our vision. This is my vision to make things easier to do business with our customers, to better partner with the community, and whether anything changes within Pueblo on what they're doing with the off-ramp, we're going to continue, and I'm going to continue to do the right thing on behalf of our customers and our community. So I will sit here and I will look at every one of you and say the off-ramp doesn't have anything to do with my vision and what I want to do for the community and the customers. It's personal to me.
And I appreciate that, and if I'm coming across as that being directed to you personally, that's not the case. I'm directing it towards Black Hills. And then
Sure.
My final question is, one of the problems I'm hearing about is the fact that when our downtown district goes blank, and then whatever time later you come back online, we've got 200 refrigerators and coolers that are turning on. And some of those 3 or 4 in one business, now all of a sudden we have a massive spike in usage, and then you're turning around and charging us for that spike that you essentially created. Because based on most of your outages, those are not customer-created outages. Those are some kind of system outages.
Sure.
That particular issue needs to be addressed somehow.
Okay.
That we're taking care of those spike charges that are happening directly after an outage. Thank you.
Yep. And Councilman, if I could,
Sure.
I know you said, well, you're not holding me, accountable. But I would ask that, with some of the comments that you brought up, I would ask that if you don't see changes, you can hold me personally accountable.
I will.
For this, and I will get you my contact
appreciate it.
information, and because we want to improve things. That's my goal.
And we're looking for a good partner.
Sure.
And I think a part of that accountability hopefully I speak for all of you, but for myself, would be the attentiveness in communication and getting back to us that we have for the past 2.5 years have been actively seeking communication and cooperation and working towards the property as well as discussing the franchise agreement, and we have felt like we have been completely ignored.
Mr. Crocker, I have a question. You had mentioned it earlier in your report, and this is actually a legitimate question, I feel like,
Sure.
about reinvestment in our infrastructure here. But I was presented with a reliability report, and in the last 3 years, your outages have gone up by 250%. And so I'm just curious, because I understand that this is an older system, and I understand because I redo old cars. But if you put investment into an old car, usually it breaks down less, whereas your numbers are showing that it is breaking down more. So I'm just curious, what do you feel is the cause of that if you guys are reinvesting in the infrastructure?
Sure. I don't know if we've got how far back our numbers go, but the reliability in 2017 was definitely tough across all of our service territory. I will say that there were literally 2 outages that negatively impacted the Canyon City area in 2017. One of them was a truck accident that took out one of our structures. Literally, that was 10% of our annual outages that we had. And then we had a failure at one of our substations, and it just so happened that when we brought some backup equipment in, we had additional outages along that, and I mean, there's no reason, there's no excuse for that. We've got to continue to look at, you know, our maintenance and our investments, and you know, even despite some of those outages in a challenging year, we measure ourselves across about 89 utilities nationwide through an area where we actually literally have to certify and send our reliability metrics in. And we are in what we call the top quartile nationwide. Even in 2017, when we went up, our minutes went up about 6 minutes of average outage out of I think it was about 70 or 80. That still put us in literally the top 25% for reliability nationwide. Now, I know.
Oh, I was going to say, all due respect, the citizens of Canyon City probably appreciate that, but I don't know if those numbers are reflective in our individual municipality. That would be the numbers they would probably be curious
Sure.
about, how our municipality,
Sure.
reliability-wise, cares.
Sure.
Because commercially, you know, individual spikes of outages are not invasive, but for our commercial district, when you have extended outages, you know, you could be costing literally more than the entire month's power bill in lost sales revenue, which impacts even the city in sales tax collection, and impacts tourism travel. You know, things like that are quite invasive.
Sure.
We even had a school shut down for the day because of power outages, and City Hall itself had to close business because of an extended power outage.
And I think people are understanding to minute outages. I think it's these extended outages that are really hitting a nerve.
Sure.
Because quite honestly, you know, 12 hours of outage, you know, having to close schools, having to close commercial districts, our entire central business district was out for a day. You know, that's, you have to understand from a commercial aspect, that's kind of unacceptable.
Yeah.
I mean, what would it do to Black Hills to shut down their entire operation for a day?
Yeah.
I mean,
And not
just the
get
dollars.
paid. Yeah, have
Yeah.
no money for that time.
Yeah, no, I hear you loud and clear, and I you know, it'd be nice for me to sit here and, you know, commit 100% reliability. I can just tell you, we will, you know, we will, customers, we know that's important too, and we will continue to work for that as you know, we talked about the partnership here.
All right, let's move down the line. Do you have any questions at this time? Do you have any, or Mayor, I guess you're next.
Don't
Do you have any
overlook,
questions
that's,
at this time?
I think it's well done. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, great questions. So no, you took most of mine.
Greg, do you have additional questions at this time?
No, not as of right now. Thank you for answering those. I
Dolly?
appreciate that.
Welcome.
The only
Right.
thing I want to say is, we're looking forward to you taking the information we gave you and coming back with answers that we've asked for so that the public knows where they're. You got a tough job ahead of you, but we're taking you to your word that you're going to do everything you can to try to make things better for everyone. Thank you, sir.
I will do that.
Okay, I do have a few questions before we open up to public comment. You said that you're at 19% renewable energy right now. You're working towards 30%. What is your deadline or your timeline for 30% renewables?
2025. 2020. Getting
2020.
states mixed up.
Okay, and I also have a question. In the reading that I've done, that there's consideration of increasing fees for those homeowners who have rooftop solar panels. Is that something that you're addressing as well?
Yeah, so the fees, the commission has directly, you know, addressed the fees, and they came up with a specific number that they believe the fees should be. And I think it's actually a lower number, and
When you mean by lower, like a lower increase?
yeah, it is, and so the challenge that that the company, the Office of Consumer Advocate, the Public Utilities Commission always has to contend with is that theoretically, if you were to say, okay, the solar customers have to have an electrical system to connect to, matter of fact, to bring solar, to send solar energy out, and then to bring energy in when the solar is not actually operating like at night. And the actual cost of the grid, you know, in your electric bill is about 65 cents on the dollar. So if you could envision a solar customer that essentially uses kind of a net zero energy, even though they're sending energy out and bringing energy in when it's not available, the net use was zero. Well, theoretically, their energy charge could be zero. And so what that means is the fixed cost of the grid, the rest of the customer base has to pick that up. And I've always used the example of my aunt who's a widow and who's on a fixed income, and she's challenged to pay an electric bill or any bills. Is that fair that, you know, somebody that can invest in $10,000 of solar and put that on, that she's subsidizing the grid cost because they're not picking up their fair share? So that's kind of the discussion that ensues when you talk about, you know, about solar. I think there's a balance there, because there's a lot of benefits for solar. It's just got to be fair to all the other customer classes.
And speaking of solar, is it true that for commercial uses that it's not allowed to have solar panels or rooftop solar panels for commercial businesses? Or could a commercial business utilize solar panels to supplement their electric bill?
I don't know why commercial customers would not be able to use that. Matter of fact, one of the things that we are looking at, and again, this is you know, solutions for our customers. When we're looking at least when I came here and I was watching what was happening with the phase 2 and the different rate designs, we started looking at exploring, well, what are some options for our different customers that we would be able to provide, whether it's residential, you know, commercial, or even large power users. So I think there's, Councilwoman, I think there's going to be more to follow on maybe some potential other options that we might be looking at to help some of those
Open
customers.
it up to commercial?
Yes.
Okay, I think we're ready to go ahead. Okay.
Just clear, did I understand that you're talking about reaching the 30% goal by 2020? 2 years?
2020, correct? Yeah.
Okay.
And that's just because right now we're in the process with the commission and putting on additional solar energy. I would say that Black Hills Energy is very well positioned for being able to implement solar because of our generation that we put in place. It is literally state-of-the-art, some of the most efficient generation at all, and the beauty of that is as you put more renewables on, and renewables will fluctuate day to day, month to month, our new gas generation is actually designed to be able to respond very efficiently to that, versus coal plants and older generation struggle to move up and down. So I think that's going to be a benefit.
All right, are we ready for public comment?
One more question.
Okay.
When did the transition to renewables start with Black Hills? 2006. So from 2006 to 2018, we've gone 19%. Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I had that correct. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to call your name in an order of when your request to speak was given.
They got out of order by the time they got, by the time you guys handed them, they kind of got out of order, so.
So it's going to be random. But we will ask that because of the, in the interest of time and the size of the group, that your comments be limited to 2 minutes. And please pay attention to the comments that are made. We'd like to have each one give new feedback or new things instead of just repeating the exact same comments over and over again. Yeah, if you wish to speak, you go ahead and fill out a form, and we'll be happy to hear from you. We're going to start out with Larry Jones.
My comments are only based upon what I have known from the newspaper as a comparison between Black Hills and San Isabel. I'm here on that basis to support the renewal for Black Hills. I urge the city to conduct an impartial study comparing apples and apples and so on. If that, and publish a paper to give us the knowledge to make wise choices. It seems to me that the fees and rates with San Isabel are higher for the normal residential customer than they are with Black Hills. And I'm one of the solar customers, and I wonder how, with a switch to somebody that does not believe in really doing the renewables, such as San Isabel, how that will work on going forward. And so that's my primary consideration.
Thank you for your comments. I do have a question, though. The question of San Isabel, wouldn't it be more the question not if they could replace Black Hills service, but if they would need to purchase from Black Hills the equipment?
That's a complex process. Is that, let me just take a minute to explain. Essentially, council would, if you want to call it, negotiate an agreement with Black Hills Energy. Once we finalize that agreement would then go to the voters of Canyon City, and that agreement has to be approved. And if the voters were to approve that agreement, we would then move forward. Correct me if I'm wrong, Tony or Catherine. Correct. If the voters did not approve that agreement, then we go to Plan B, whatever that is. The grid belongs to Black Hills Energy, and essentially Black Hills Energy has to sell it unless we reach this impasse, and then there are some ugly alternatives that are available to acquire that so that it could be sold. So there are alternatives, but it gets ugly and it gets very long term. But that's the process. All we can do is approve an agreement and then send it to the voters. And then the voters have to approve that agreement, which we anticipate in.
But it's a good point to have a study of what those rates would be.
Oh, yeah, but just keep in mind
thank
that
you for your comments.
the voters are ultimately going to approve that agreement.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and I was aware of that. My only thing was to get a study done to inform the voters so that the voters have the facts in front of them rather than the spin.
Gotcha. All right, Rhonda Sherrato.
Rhonda Sherrato, 94 Eagle Drive South. Hi, everybody. Thanks
Hello.
for giving us a few minutes. Two things I'm going to ask for. In the respect of time, we've got about half dozen, 8, 9 people up here that do not just have comments. We have questions, and we'd like responses. I'm asking for 3 minutes per person, because we need a little bit of
We're
time.
going to stick with 2 for right now, and we'll see how it goes. So go ahead and shoot your questions. And
Okay, let's back up just a second. I'm part of the Canyon City Energy Future Committee that's been put together for the last 2 months. working with several people that actually know what's going on with this energy issue. And I believe that there is a lot of questions that council and the mayor don't quite understand, that there is options. And we are asking to stop the vote. We want to place this on a hold, in essence, stop the clock. There is no reason that we should end up having 2 votes when we can do this in 1 vote. We're going to present some options to you, and several people are going to take some minutes to talk about these things. Let me back up for a quick second. We own Prospectors RV Resort, as I keep saying over and over at these meetings, and we have had some major issues with deposits, demand rate hikes, the exact same thing that Mr. Dorito said when all of a sudden the energy gets turned on and we're at this on-demand rate problems. And thankfully Black Hills has actually listened to me and come to my aid to work through my issues up at the park, which I appreciate. Thank you very much for doing that and taking some time with me. I knew I shouldn't have gone first. I'm going to ask this question to Ryan. One of the reasons that I had trouble as a new business coming into Canyon City is because of the energy bill. And my question to Ryan is how is our Black Hills contracts and the percentages that we pay for energy affecting economic development as it relates to new businesses wanting to come into Canyon City and set up business here?
From an economic development standpoint, there are a lot of factors that go into site selection or starting a new business. The cost of doing business is one of those factors, and typically energy costs are one of those. It's typically your lease or your rent or your mortgage payments and your energy bill. Those tend to be the highest costs for businesses. I think when you look at something like the restaurant industry, you might be paying somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 a month in energy bills. From an economic development standpoint, the cost of energy is very important. If there are ways to bring that cost down, that's certainly something that we would want to look at. But again, that's something that's governed by the PUC.
And I understand my time is up. I'm encouraging and urging our attorney, that Catherine, I believe, is on the phone. We are having no say in this franchise discussion between the attorneys at this point because it's privileged information. We were told that we can't see the franchise agreement that's been presented to our attorney. How is it that these attorneys can get together, our attorney Catherine and Black Hills attorney, to discuss a franchise agreement when we have so many issues that need to be looked at from the people? How is it that we're wasting time before our attorney says, well, what is it that we would want to see changed in the franchise agreement? We're going to put this to a vote when nobody's even seen this franchise agreement, and we're going to all vote no, I guarantee you.
We're having this discussion right now, so we can find out what your concerns are. And as we stated in the beginning, we're really limited on what we can talk to and address in the franchise agreement.
I encourage the council to not move forward with putting this to a vote and stop this clock because we have options. That's my question. That's my request of City Council, is not do this vote right now. We don't have to.
And I would say that we're going to have some more discussions. You will have a say in your concerns in our future discussions, but it has to be within the realm of what we can control in a franchise agreement.
Are we, the public, going to be able to see the franchise agreement before it's voted on?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so before the attorneys go back and forth and waste the time, how does our attorney know what our concerns are? They're already talking about it, correct?
That's part of the negotiation process, and we're not Congress. We're not going to give you something to vote on the day that the vote is held.
Well, I think there's 2 phases here. We got the typical contract negotiations between attorneys, and you're in business and you understand that process.
Yeah.
And that's mostly confidential. Once council reaches that agreement based upon what we believe is in the best interests of council and our residents, we will take that agreement and then turn it over to the voters. And the voters will then, as we approve that for vote, that becomes a public document and people can read it.
And understand
And you can
that
approve it or not approve it.
that franchise agreement can't talk, by law, it can't talk about deposit fees or demand charges and rates for solar panels or renewables. That's a PUC issue, not a franchise agreement issue.
Of course, but I'll just leave it right there. Go ahead to the
Okay.
next person.
Let's go ahead and hear from,
Just
let's go
want to
to,
clarify that Rhonda, you or any other members of this organization or anyone in the community can convey those concerns to me. I'm a conduit to the attorneys. They in turn can share that with Black Hills. So if you have a list of concerns and issues, I'd be happy to receive them from you.
Perfect, and that's what our board has put together, is issues that we want to present to you to bring to the attorney as a voice of the people. So continue to listen to the people. Thank you.
And Catherine, is that something we could set up a meeting in a time when you are in town, where we could sit together with those folks? So let's get that scheduled, where we
Yeah.
can have a meeting together.
Perfect.
And you can be face-to-face with our attorney.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
And you can send it
Appreciate
to
that.
me as well, as the mayor.
Great.
Okay?
Great, thank you.
All right, Donna Murphy, you have 2 minutes.
Hi, Donna Murphy, 241 Glenmore Road. I have the franchise agreement here, a hard copy. It's also on the internet. But this was signed in November 3rd, 1992, by the city clerk at the time and Mayor Jensen. And that year, 1992, Achy Breaky Heart was the #1 song. We have gone 26 years now, and things are so different that I'm begging of you, and I'm not a voter, I live in the county, but I do pay Black Hills. I'm begging of you, do not sign a 25-year agreement, and let's slow this whole process down so that we can all have something to say about it. Florence just signed in January a 25-year agreement, and I don't know why they did that. It seems to me the investor-owned Black Hills benefits by getting a 25-year agreement, and I would recommend no longer than 5 years, and maybe with a break-off point. We do have other options. I think some of the more sophisticated people hear about energy. I've learned more about electricity in the past 2 months than I ever wanted to learn. But I think there are other options, and plus we need to look to our neighbors in Pueblo, whose agreement comes up in 2020. So they're the largest part of the population, and we need not to do something rash right now. Thanks.
Emily Tracy?
Thanks, Mayor and Council and staff, for the opportunity to speak to you. It's interesting how the discussion of time has come up when you all met Monday night, and from the newspaper, sounds like you had a pretty exciting meeting Monday night. Came up again, the time issue came up again in discussing the trash ordinance and not wanting to jump ahead too quickly and then find out after something is final that it's not going to work. And I think we're in the same category here. So I too am asking that we slow the process down. We really appreciate the opportunity today to talk with you and to have Black Hills folks here. I think we need several more sessions and perhaps more of an open work session where we can exchange this information. I appreciate too that Black Hills talked quite a bit today about rate issues, and we understand, the group of us who's been working on this, we understand the city doesn't control rates, but it's important for us all to know about these rates and what goes into them. So as it is now, if we go ahead as a city and have a vote in June, there's going to be a lot of unknowns. You want that to be a successful vote. I think Black Hills wants that to be a successful vote. It seems to me that we would be losing time if we went through a process where it was not successful and had to start over. There's much to be learned from Pueblo's experience. There's much to be learned from what those of us who have been studying this for several months. We believe, as Donna mentioned, that we shouldn't be looking at a 20 or 25-year franchise agreement. The energy landscape is changing so rapidly. We should look at something much shorter, or at least have a way to reconsider it after 5 years if it's a longer agreement. As a community group, we are learning a lot from Pueblo, and we want to connect the council and mayor with Pueblo more than perhaps you have been, because they've been working on this for several years, and many of their issues are just like ours. So we are happy to be here today. We hope we can meet with you all again. We believe the city of Canyon City can lead on this issue, and we hope that you will.
Thank you. Kathy Worthington?
Well, she's walking up. She mentioned June. That's not practical, is it?
No.
We're talking best November? I mean,
We'll know when we actually have a franchise agreement.
Right,
and
I mean-
then the council will set the date for an election.
Based on the feedback we've been getting from Black Hills, it could be some time before.
Yeah,
no, no way June's going to
Yeah,
happen.
yeah, yeah.
It's just,
But there is no established date.
Good evening. I'm Kathy Worthington, 66 Blue Grouse Drive. I am a retired Xcel Energy employee, and for the last 10 years of my life, I was the area manager for Southern Colorado, where I negotiated the franchises in 8 communities that I served. So I'm here today just to let everybody know, and I think you already are well aware of it, that although the franchise expired in 17, it goes on a month-to-month basis until a new one is negotiated and approved by the citizens of Canyon City. I do also was interested today when I got a copy of the new franchise from Florence that was signed in January of this year. It is 14 pages, and I brought an example. This is the franchise from Hooper, Colorado, which is in the San Luis Valley. It is 48 pages or so. And I just wanted to let you know that there's a lot of options. And when I say this is from Xcel Energy, Public Service Company of Colorado. There are a lot of things that can be included in the franchise that does not have to do with rates or deposits or anything that way. It has to do with reliability. It has to do with overhead to underground of facilities and all sorts of things. So I want to make sure that people are aware, especially on the council and of course the attorneys that are well aware of working on franchises, that there are a lot of things that can be included in them that were not included in the Florence one. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Kathy. Steve Andrews will be next.
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead,
This-
John Hemrick.
This is for Kathy. Kathy, do you have other copies of franchise agreements? And if you do, you can stay there, you don't, because this is just requires a head nod. And that's my question is, if you have other franchise agreements, can you share them with us? Send them to Tony O'Rourke, please, and he can make sure we get a copy.
And we can collect as many as you want. They're all public records.
Yeah, great.
Yep, that'd be fantastic. Thank you for that resource. All right, Steve?
Before you punch my 2-minute clock, can I address your question on solar and commercial?
I think that's part of the 2 minutes.
It's part of the 2 minutes.
Okay, then I'll pass. My name is Steve Andrews. I'm a retired energy consultant living in Florence. I've done some work in the past at the PUC as well as the Office of Consumer Counsel back in the day. My remarks today touch on what is going on with our fellow consumers in Pueblo. My focus down there on behalf of Pueblo's energy future has targeted energy costs within the business sector. As you may recall, on September 25th, Pueblo City Council voted 7-0 to study the off-ramp option within their 20-year franchise agreement with Black Hills. Despite what Black Hills implies in their recent newspaper ads, Colorado statute allows for early exits from a franchise agreement in the years 10 and 15 of that agreement, which in Pueblo's case are the years 2020 and 2025. By that same 7-0 vote, City Council also created a 7-member electric utilities commission for Pueblo. In late January, that commission began a series of bi-monthly 1-hour meetings to start the long-term study process. They're moving slowly in their study of municipalization and other options, though efforts by a couple of their working subcommittees sound more promising. Their immediate plan includes hiring a PR firm and hiring a utility consultant experienced in breakaway efforts, that is, cities breaking away from their investor-owned utilities. That's to help study of the feasibility of doing that. Our group in Pueblo is also putting on a series of educational town hall meetings, bringing in speakers to speak to both the public plus the Electric Utilities Commission. Our first town hall was last week. We plan on one every 4 to 6 weeks. You are certainly welcome. We can keep you in the loop. If Pueblo decides to break away, what might that mean for Canyon City? Most importantly, rates could go up, possibly substantially, if Pueblo is the only city to leave the service territory. That's because Pueblo is the plum in the 95,000 meter area, the largest and highest density segment. My last remarks here. Pueblo is demanding change due to the severe economic impact of Black Hill's extremely high rates and due to the lack of local control. We expect that change is likely to happen. It strikes our group here in Canyon that it would be prudent to wait and see what happens in Pueblo before you sign a new franchise agreement with Black Hills Energy. Thank you.
Steve, can you give me a 1-minute answer about the commercial solar panels?
Sure. When Black Hills last Phase 2 rate case kicked in on August 1, 2013, there were dramatic changes in the demand charge. The demand charges went way up, and energy charges went way down. They went up so much and so far down that it only cost half a cent per kilowatt hour, plus or minus, to buy a unit of energy, whereas the demand was where the cost was transferred to. So for a solar customer who's going to save energy but not demand, it did not make sense under the new rate structure to invest in commercial applications on your whatever kind of business you had. Now that demand structure is going to change, the suitability of a commercial entity investing in solar needs to be revisited. But for the time being, it does not make good sense to invest in solar if you're a commercial entity.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yeah, you did. You did good on that minute. All right, Kathy Madonna, please.
Hi, Kathy Madonna, 1536 Grand Avenue in Lincoln Park. Thank you for letting all of us address you. I really do appreciate this. And are you confused yet? I am, and I've been meeting with our group for the last 2 months, and again, I've learned more than I ever wanted to know. My comment to you is that this is overwhelming. This is a lot of information. It's a lot of detail. I appreciate Black Hills being here, but I don't want to be schmoozed by you now that there is a threat that you might lose your top customer and maybe your second customer in the area. I encourage you to get professional opinions and resources and pay attention to Pueblo and anyone else. I take care, I'm a businesswoman, I'm an insurance specialist in Medicare. My clients are senior citizens on fixed income, if not on disability. The utility bills are critical with everything else that's going up. You are my vote. Please be my vote, and please make intelligent, resourced decisions on my behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Let's go to Beth Hart, please.
Beth Hart, Highway 67, Fremont County. Thank you, Mayor and members of council, for letting me speak with you today. I live in the county since 1996. I own my own business and am a licensed electrical contractor and an electrician. Great leaders teach and leave their legacies for others to follow. And I wanted to give you an example. The other day, one of my dear employees put up some EMT on an outside wall of a $500,000 house in a loop. And it's legal, but visually it's not so great. So I could have done many things. I could have just totally ignored it. I could have said in disgust that you need to do this my way. I could listen to the apprentice to try and understand what he had in mind. and why he did it that way. And then I could ask the apprentice how he could do it a different way. Leaders learn from their students as much as students learn from their leaders. I'm a business owner in the county and I have no vote. You are my vote. This is my one chance to speak at the local table and talk about these issues. The franchise issues need more examination. We need to slow this down for all of us to learn what is best for Canyon City and Fremont County. You do have control over the quality of service, over the restoration of service, over excavation and construction, over installation and maintenance, over access to utility records. These needs examination to find what is right for us.
Thank you, Beth. I appreciate
Thank
your
you.
comments.
Thank you.
Carol Dunn?
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having us here today. I'm going to read this so I don't miss something. On January 27th, 2018, Hilltop Market closed its doors. Several factors were involved in our decision to close and reinvent ourselves with a different business model. Overhead costs, specifically our Black Hills energy bill, was one factor. As a small business with a big energy use, coolers and freezers running constantly, our power bill was the biggest expense, right behind merchandise and payroll. Brian Dieter, our partner, my son-in-law, and Sparky the electrician made many upgrades, did make those upgrades in our lighting, our electrical panel, and energy-saving equipment. But these changes made little difference in our power bill, and I will tell you why. The demand charge used by Black Hills is out of line with other energy suppliers in Colorado. There is some indication that this policy may be changing, but not soon enough to make a difference at Hilltop. Once a commercial consumer passes 10 kilowatts of demand, it enters the demand class of billing rate schedules. The monthly demand, which you pay for a particular month, is determined by the highest 15 minutes of rate of demand. This spike can happen when several high demand units start up all at once, coming off a defrost cycle, for example. A business owner can control that event somewhat, but what if there's a power outage, even a short one, and all the coolers and freezers come back on simultaneously? The demand can go above 50 kilowatts, and once you hit that 50 kilowatt level, you can't be charged for less than 50 kilowatts for the next 12 months, no matter what energy saving measures you try. This Black Hills threshold creates a business-unfriendly climate for Canyon City. The commercial demand charge threshold should be changed from 10 kilowatts to 25 used by other providers, including Xcel, and I understand that that is under consideration. And also the demand punishment period should be reduced from the current 12 months and reevaluated differently. As a business person, like many of you, no major decision would ever be made without a thorough assessment of the alternatives. And I hope you're looking closely at this Black Hills agreement, which has been in place for the last 25 years and has caused this unfriendly business environment in Canyon City. I want you to make sure that it meets the infrastructure and technology needs of our community. Please take the time to consider carefully, listen to input from everyone, residential users, commercial users, and industry, as we work together toward that bright future we all want. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Rick? Rick Burford. Rick Buford.
Oh, don't get old, it hurts. Rick Burford. I've been here 60 years in Fremont County. I own a business now that I took over. My electric bills, and I have them right here, have gone from $900 a month to $1,700 a month. That's 3/4 above what I have. All I'm asking, just like you guys, they're going to put me out of business. So when they put me out of business, then we have to go other places, travel further out of town and things for this. I have the documentation. I have complained to the Black Hills. All they did was mumble jumble back to me when I went to the PUC. They says, put in LED lightings, change this, change that. I did all of that. Did they ever come out and see any of that? No, they didn't, but my bill keeps going up higher. I'm asking the council, before you vote or do anything on this, at least listen to the residents of Fremont County and Canyon City before we get into any agreement. Because Black Hills Energy, to give you one example, came out and changed my meter 3 times because they didn't like the way that they were billing me. So when they changed it, my bill went from $9.58 to $17.36. And that's where it's staying. They're putting small businesses like me, Hilltop, and other places out of business because they got to pay everybody else for what they need to do. That's pretty much all I have to say. I've worked and lived in this county and in this city and this for almost 60 years. I don't want to see it go down, and it's where it's going right now. It's going down. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick, and I hope you feel that we are listening to you today. Leanne?
My name's Leanne Buffy McFadden. I live at 320 Harrison Avenue here in Canyon City. And Councilman Meisner, I can answer your question as a former county commissioner from 2013 to 2017 in Pueblo County, that my office handled the majority of the constituent concerns, and it was very troubling. You heard Donna Murphy refer to 1992 as achy breaky heart, and that infamous mullet. Back in 1992, back in 1992, sorry, I lost the name of the movie. A Few Good Men was the biggest movie of the year. And that line, "You can't handle the truth," became an everyday saying. In 1992, we all had pagers. Mine was purple, because many of us didn't decide to get the Motorola brick phone yet. My point is technology changes. You saw Donna Murphy hold up the 1992 Canyon City franchise agreement. And although we can't see the work product that's been given or suggested from Black Hills as a franchise agreement, I did go myself to get Florence's, and it's pretty much the same. So I'm guessing I'm not out of line to say I'm disappointed that likely what you've been given from Black Hills and what Florence just signed looks a lot like 1992. I don't want to live in 1992. I want the technology to prevent everything shutting down so we don't have the demand rate problems. I want to look outside of the narrow boundaries of a franchise agreement only being right-of-way, so we work with our community and communicate. You saw the franchise agreement, Kathy Worthington. By the way, Steve Andrews and Kathy Worthington, if they were on the open market, could charge a hefty sum for their consultation. I want to communicate with timelines, expectations, and I'd be a hypocrite to Councilman Hamrick if I didn't say that maybe part of the franchise agreement would be the transference of the property cleaned up to a standard that Canyon City sets and expects. I know you've put up with me a long time. We don't know all the answers, and just by virtue of that, I'm not convinced that a franchise agreement would pass by the citizens of the city of Canyon City on behalf of residential businesses and large industrial consumers like Wholesome Cement. Either way, we need more information, we need more input, we need to go and look at positive impacting franchise agreements that really bring us up to speed. This is not okay. We do need more information. We're not allowed to talk about rates. I did hear Black Hills talk a lot about rates. That's fine. We are educated enough to know that can't be in a franchise agreement. What I haven't heard is what you're going to do for us. By the way, this month, I don't have a desire to travel to South Dakota, but it's the annual meeting this month in April for Black Hills Energy. You can go online and look at their prospectus. I would like to see in a franchise agreement the belief that if we have a 5-year agreement, at least one of their annual meetings is held right here in Canyon City, where they fill up our hotels, and they eat our food in our restaurants, and they do business here face-to-face with us. That's just one other example. Working with our street department here, overhead electrical going underground, the vision of Canyon City in our historic district. I'm excited to be a Canyon City resident,
Okay,
and this could be
we've
one of
met
the
your 2
most
minutes.
important decisions you could make. And I want everyone to see Mayor Preston's signature, like Roger Jensen's, and go, how did they know that could be 10 years ago, 15 years ago? Slow the process down.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to make one correction that you said. We
Yes,
were
sir.
not given an agreement of any kind from Black Hills, and we won't accept it. You said that they were given that. We didn't get any. Have any of you seen a contract from Black Hills? So that's what you said. That's not true.
Thank you for the question, Mayor Preston Troutman. We were told in our meeting by Black Hills that a document of what the template should be for a franchise agreement went to you all in July. To the lawyers, excuse me.
That's fine. They can do that. It hasn't come to us.
Either
So-
way, that's an example of why this process needs to be slowed down.
Well, we'll get a copy of it, and the people will get to vote on it, and you'll get to hear about it.
Because of the certificate and convenience of necessity, the lights will stay on in Canyon City, whether we have a new franchise agreement or not. That's important to realize.
All right, Jerry Fry.
Thank you all. Jerry Fry, owner Cup and Cone Ice Cream Parlor on the corner of 4th and Highway 50, Canyon City. What I have heard today sounds like a crossroads, not only for us, but for Black Hills. Some of the things that I've heard today have kind of surprised me and very much concerned me just today. And I have had the ice cream shop for 5 years now, and I have done everything I can within that environment and landscape to make the shop as clean and lean an electrical machine as it can be. And that has not been enough. When I stepped back from this and began to look at what created the landscape where we're having to perform, I see that there are some real serious problems with how Black Hills has been doing business. And just here today, the presentation that came off sounds like we have phase 2 that would redesign the cost of service and reallocate stuff. We have tier grades that would restructure prices for different users. I even heard that Black Hills has to have a certification in other locations, but not here, to prove that they are doing the right job. These things all flew past me, and I may not have picked them up totally correctly, but my point is, there is a crossroads here where council is being asked to take action that they haven't had to face for 25 years, and you're undergunned, and Black Hills is trying to make changes that are reactionary to the needs of this community, and you're undergunned. So I feel like everybody needs to kind of ramp up and look at this with the intent of meeting the needs of the customer. I don't want to be put out of business just because I have 7 freezers. And when a power energy goes out and my freezers ramp back up, I get the spike. But it also does things like take out my swipe card machine, which costs me another big amount. So there's many ramifications from all of the things that we have to live in the electrical landscape, and that landscape is changing. And I hope that we can all meet it head on and find a solution that's good for all of us.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you.
That's all the requests I have for citizens to speak. Oh, Lisa Himes, you have one?
Lisa Himes, 3165 Grandview Avenue. First of all, I want to thank you for letting me get up and speak. Second of all, I want to thank Black Hills Energy for being here today so that we could all address them. Thank you. Thirdly, I would like to address one comment that Councilman Meisner made. I want to tell you that through Glenn Livingood and Black Hills Energy, during my 3 years at the Chamber of Commerce, they were very supportive of us, and they sponsored a lot, and they were very involved. So I would like to bring that to everyone's attention. If I ever had a problem, I called Glenn. He took care of it. As far as Black Hills was concerned, he was very responsive. The question I have is, having spent several years at the Chamber of Commerce, I happen to know that many of our businesses are seasonal. So do those seasonal businesses, are they affected by this spike? They're going to open up the end of April, and they're going to be turning on all their, I mean, there's a lot of restaurants, a lot of things that have freezers and coolers, and they're going to be turning these items on, and they are only open from April until the end of September. So are they going to be paying this astronomical hike because they're a seasonal business? And then I would like also to mention, personally, we have Colin Orchards. We're a family farm that has been here since 1890. We have carried a family farm market in this community since 1937. Our farm market is open from the beginning of July until the Christmas season. Obviously, we turn our coolers on when we start getting product. Well, that's going to be a big spike. We keep one small walk-in open all year long. But other than that, when we start turning in those coolers, because the peaches come in and the different products come in, we're going to have a big spike. Our electric bills, I've got to tell you, eat up a tremendous amount of our profit. And profit for farmers is next to nothing. That's why farmers aren't farming here anymore. Their land's more valuable, and we're forced to buy food and product from China and South America and places that don't have the health standards that we have here. And electricity can put farmers out of market. So
Thank you,
I
Lisa.
just want to make that comment. Thank you.
We appreciate your comments. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to address council? Commissioner Payne.
Can he answer the question?
Me?
No, I asked the question about how will it affect the seasonal businesses? Will it affect a farm market, their spike?
Do you have an answer?
I can answer that. I think some of the changes in the demand charge right now with the Phase 2 redesign, I think is going to alleviate some of those challenges that you brought up. I think, yeah. Right now, it's in the middle of the Utilities Commission, and they're still moving things around, but they've said on 2 commercial accounts that the demand charge needs to go away. So as soon as the commission finalizes an order, we're going to be looking at that, and it's my hope that will definitely be a benefit to some of the customers and yourself.
And I just want to have City Council think about those businesses that are only seasonal, that would be tremendously affected.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Payne.
Good afternoon, Council. Thank you for letting me speak. Fremont County Commissioner Tim Payne. Like the other folks that live in the county, you guys are my vote on this. But the one thing I want to bring up is the new line coming in on north end of Canyon, north end of Penrose coming in. This, what we were told, is supposed to stop a lot of this outages that is plaguing our community. And that hasn't been brought up at all this afternoon about this new line coming in. It's supposed to be a huge line with a new substation up by Hogbacks. And then the second part of that question is, with this new line, are we going to get, is that going to reflect on all of our bills? And how much more are we going to have to pay for that new line on that? And so that's something I want brought up because that new line hasn't been discussed at all.
So currently we're in the early phases acquiring right-of-way.
Can you talk in the microphone more directly, please?
Currently we're in early phases of acquiring right-of-way for that project. That project will increase the reliability for our transmission system to the Canyon City area. The placement of the substations are currently under negotiations. So at this point, we don't know exactly where those will sit. But with that infrastructure in place, it'll increase the reliability to the northern part of Canyon City and/or Penrose.
And what's the timeline that you're anticipating?
2021.
Okay.
is
Are they-
the target for
Are
completion.
there any other projects that will help and benefit South Canyon?
Yeah, our planning group is consistently or constantly reviewing our system. And so we have a 5-year outlook for major capital improvements, but we're also reviewing minor, and those typically are out about 2 years. Currently, I'm not aware of any projects for the South Canyon area, but that changes on a year-to-year basis.
I will add, Councilwoman, a couple of years ago, we started something called a line patrol program, and it's a program where we get out and we patrol by foot or by vehicle if we can see it, but our entire system. And the whole intent of that is a reliability improvement, because if we can get out there and we can see things ahead of time before they cause an outage, maybe it's a floating wire because it's not going to cause an issue until there's wind, we're addressing that. So that's something that's important, and it's got a long-lasting improvement to reliability.
Okay, I saw you taking a lot of notes, and I appreciate that, and I hope that we can schedule a meeting in the near future to maybe address some of the concerns that were brought up today. But for right now, do you have any additional comments that you'd like to make in response to the things that you've heard?
No, I very much, I mean, it might feel like, gosh, unlucky guy here, but this is what I've been doing for the last, few months since I arrived. I truly do appreciate the input. I think there's things that we can definitely do, and the accountability from what I heard from many of you lies squarely on me, and we're gonna work hard to continue to improve that partnership. Definitely upgrade from what I heard today. It's good hearing these comments. I mean, these are our customers. With our customers, we don't have a business, so it's good. It's things that. Some of the things that we've heard in the past in Pueblo and other areas that we've started to work on. But it's, I appreciate being here, it was quite a while, so I appreciate getting the time here. And then I would like to thank, my employees. We got 22 employees here in the Canyon City area, which, in my estimation, I'll put them up against any other employee in any other utility business nationwide, and I just like to thank them, because they're out when I'm sleeping in bed at night and there's outages. They're out, restoring power and taking care of our customers, and they just do a really good job of it, in my estimation. So thanks again. I'll commit. We are going to work hard for Canyon City and our other communities, and we got a lot of work to do.
So will you be available for a meeting, another public meeting in the near future?
Absolutely. It'd be my hope that we would be interacting before even another public meeting.
Okay.
So some things that.
Well, first, I just want to make sure that we do, Tony, 2 things. 1, schedule this public meeting to address the concerns that were done today as we move forward in the franchise agreement. And number 2, the meeting with the attorney, with our local energy group, so they can sit down face-to-face with Catherine. We can do that. We have more questions from council?
I just had a question, backing up to Commissioner Payne's question. I believe his question was twofold, and he inquired about cost. I don't believe that was answered.
Sure, I can address that. One of the unique things about a utility business is, once we have a rate increase like we had last year, all the investments that we make in the future, whether it's medical going up or investing in infrastructure, we're not like the substation he talked about, that's investment that we're making that we won't get recovery for until we file another rate increase. And my goal is, as I mentioned, is to provide rate stability. So our challenge is going to be how do we call it better every day. So how do we drive costs out of our business, other areas where we can continue to invest a lot of capital infrastructure and not go in for another rate increase. So,
Okay, so with this new line, we're not looking at another rate increase
no,
until, okay.
we're looking at rate, you know, my goal is to have rate stability, everything that
Okay.
I've heard. But the current, it seems like the current rate increase, it started in, I think, probably 2016, and with phase one and the phase two, it just almost seems like it's a constant, you know, rate increase when it's really not. It's, you know, it's one rate increase and then an allocation of all of our costs.
Now, one more question, I'm sorry, but with the tiered pricing that you were talking about, that's phase two, do you have a kind of a blueprint of what that's gonna look like that you can share with us, or?
You know, I cannot, and I'll tell you why, is because today the commission had a hearing, and the amount of dollars moving between rate classes is still unsettled now. So if I gave you a number right now, when they finalize that or issue an order, that could likely be different.
Okay, and when those are published, is it feasible to find out comparatively where we were at before that?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah,
Thank you.
definitely. I had to think about that, but certainly.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councilman Hawkes.
This is just a suggestion to the people that have been talking about their rate increases and stuff like that. You know, I keep records from here to eternity. Before I came here, I can go back 15 years and then start with this here to show what my average monthly electric bill has been. I just have it. It might be beneficial as we proceed with what we're doing of those of you who can do that, and then you can come back and say, 5 years ago I was this, the next 5 years I went to this, and so on. Like I say, you know, it takes a lot of work, but I did it, and like I say, I went all the way back 15 years, and I can tell you my average. And in those 15 years, we had highs and lows. And I think that would be beneficial to each and every one of us, if it's possible. Thank you for what you've done.
Councilman Meisner.
Just quickly. You mentioned, I'm going to go back to the renewable energy. We're at 19% with X amount of cost, let's say per kilowatt, utilizing your current generation methods. At 30% renewable energy, is it fair to say that whatever energy company you are, the cost per kilowatt hour or minute, however you're going to calculate that, is going to be higher at a 30% renewable energy rate than it is at 19? Is that renewable? The bottom line is not renewable energy going to be fundamentally more expensive? It's cleaner, but it's going to be fundamentally more expensive. Is that a correct statement or not?
Those
Don't
are
think too hard.
Yeah, those are I'll tell you why they're challenging. I'm not trying to avoid the question. You know, there's if you were to compare like rooftop solar as an example to one of the new wind farms that we put in, you're going to have a pretty wide variable in cost just in those two areas. And then the other thing that comes into play is there's times on the actual power system where there's a lot of energy available from renewables, and the price is driven down considerably lower as compared to like when it's 100 degrees and the wind's not blowing, and you need to run your gas generation up more, so they fluctuate. But I think when you look at the overall cost to integrate renewables, I think we're, with our generation, I think we're positioned pretty well to do it at a very least cost alternative. And And then the other thing I would say is we've been working probably for about 2 years. I've been part of this, although it's more near and dear to my heart right now, is looking at joining a larger, what we call a larger market. It's a fancy word called Regional Transmission Organization, but we're looking at joining that primarily because what it does is it's us, it's Xcel, it's Western Area Power and others, and it spreads the footprint of planning and availability to low-cost power. And what that does is that allows us to get more low-cost power, and some of that is going to be renewables, and pass those savings directly on to our customers.
Do you have any
So
more
we
questions?
I'm sorry, what I could do is I could provide you kind of a range and where, different technologies are and what those prices and kind of those ranges.
Well, I think the fundamental cost is that in 2020, aside from any inflationary adjustments, under a 30% renewable energy rate, would our PUC-approved rates be potentially higher or lower than they are today?
I see where you're going from. Right now in Colorado, there is a renewable energy bill, component on your bill to about to 2%. And if you're like us or Xcel, that is supposed to cover essentially all the renewables that you have, and that is essentially baked into the rates as we have it today. So there would be no additional rate case that we would file that would increase rates based on the additional renewables.
Kathy, do you have a quick response? I know, I'm sorry. I'm going to let you wrap up, Rhonda.
I'm sorry to bother you again. Thank you for letting me come back up. I just wanted to let Vance know that Xcel, and this is after I've been retired, I do still read the paper, but basically when Xcel went out just a few months ago to put out bids for more renewables, it came back less than what we could do with gas generation or any other fossil fuel. So to address the actual installation and the cost per kilowatt hour that we could buy, it's less than what it would have been with standard type of generation. So I think that's what you're trying to get at. Now, one thing I'm putting back on my utility hat is when you're talking about comparing bills from 15 years ago or whatever, you also need to throw in your milk, you need to throw in your bread, and you need to throw in everything else.
I can do that.
Okay, I'm sure you can. All I'm trying to say is that when you start comparing bills over 15 years, you got to throw in inflation, you got to throw in everything else. And so to point that out, just as a defense to Black Hills and every other utility, you got to take it into the fact of what else, the cost of other things that are going on.
Thank you, Kathy. Rhonda, do you want to wait and have your final comments on behalf of your organization, or do you?
I just wanted a clarification, so whenever you're ready.
Go ahead and ask for a quick clarification.
My group would like to know clarification to Mayor Troutman's response that there is no document that has been given to the attorney for review. Am I understanding your comment correctly, that our attorney
No,
is
what
not
I
reviewing
tried to
something?
clarify is the assertion was made that the document's been given to these council people. We have not. If the attorney's got a copy of it, then maybe that's who should have it.
Okay,
But we
you had
don't. That was-
misunderstood. That
That was a
wasn't-
comment made by Ms. McFadden that we must have some or someone. We don't.
You
I've not said
misunderstood.
anything. No, I
Is
didn't
there a franchise
misunderstood. I heard
agreement?
what you said.
Is there a franchise agreement that's being reviewed by our attorney right now?
It's one that's being created.
Have been sharing documentation with Black Hills. That's their role, is to negotiate agreement. And at periods of
Tony, you're
time-
talking to your mic.
At periods of time, they come back to the council to update them and get further direction.
Okay, so again, clarifying, Black Hills presented a franchise agreement to our attorney for review, and they are currently discussing and talking about that document presented by Black Hills, correct?
No, I think.
Well, Catherine, can you answer that question,
Yeah,
please?
we also have our
From our
own
attorney.
suggestions. It's not a one-way discussion, it's a bilateral
No, I
discussion.
understand. Catherine?
Catherine, attorney, are you still there?
Catherine dropped out of the conversation about 5 minutes ago. I'm not sure what happened.
Oh, okay.
It's a normal negotiation where there's an exchange of ideas and concepts, both in writing and orally, and that's what's been taking place.
Okay, because Buffy's comment is very valid, that if it was given a document that's very similar to the one from Florence, that it's very similar to the one that's from 1992. So the question still remains is, did Black Hills give that document?
Well,
And is there,
Well-
so that,
I think I
we
have
need
an
to
answer.
understand.
I think I have an answer for that. Our starting place is our current franchise agreement. That's our starting place. That's everybody's starting place. That's Black Hill's starting place. That's Canyon City's starting place. We are in negotiations. There are conversations going on. And so it's not, they've given us some document, so sign it, Canyon City. We started with a document. We're working from that document. And that's the document you have, the 1992
1992 one.
agreement.
Does that answer all of our questions? Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions from council?
Just to clarify the process, I'm going to say that that's a living document. We don't know what that final document is going to look like because, with all due respect, it's taken us however long it is to get Black Hills to respond to the whole process. We are now, I'm assuming, since our last meeting, having some degree of communication between the two parties. But when the other party is not responding, it's very difficult to establish an agreement. And that seems to have started to work. And what that final document looks like, I have no idea. I mean, there's going to be some fundamental things that we can't control, and then there's going to be some things in there that we can control. So that document will evolve based upon what you people want and what we want and what Black Hills wants. So,
And I'd like to reiterate that we are in no rush either. I want to reassure you, we are not rushing into anything, that we do want to be careful. We do want to make sure that we're making the right decisions for us and for you guys especially, and that we're going to take this seriously and we're going to move forward responsibly.
that's the advantage of the current document is that it expires, but it continues to renew monthly. So there is no under the gun type of thing where get it done by December 31st or the lights go out. It just continues until you either reach an impasse and somebody makes a black and white decision, or it just keeps going.
All right, so council, are we comfortable with where we're at right now as far as moving forward, scheduling another public open meeting? I'd like to also invite council members to attend the meeting with our local activist group and our city attorney, Catherine, when that gets scheduled. I think it'd be important to have some members be a part of that discussion.
We don't have a date and time for that. It's to be
Um,
scheduled.
We'll organize that.
Thank you.
And you
Because of
have-
the open meetings laws, if you want it in open, we can have it in open. Otherwise, if you want it in private, then you're going to be limited how many council members can attend.
It's an open meeting.
I would prefer no private meetings. I mean, other than executive sessions that have to happen. It just,
Well, I'll have to talk to our legal counsel. She may not be comfortable with an open discussion about a negotiation matter.
Well, we can now obviously have a conversation about suggestions for us moving forward in our negotiations.
yeah, I think, we can have a public meeting saying, hey, these are 9 items that we want to have in the agreement, and then go back to the legal negotiation process and see if we can get 7 of them, or whatever may be the case. But
All right, and so, and Tony, and again, can you please make sure to contact our interested parties when we have some dates with our attorneys and to coordinate with Black Hills. I'd also like to reiterate, Black Hills, we really do appreciate you being here today. It was really meaningful and spoke volumes that you're at the table now and that we can have these conversations and get the answers that we need. I would love to have each of your personal contact information, if you wouldn't mind, that if I have questions, if I can have the permission to call you and talk to you about those, I would certainly appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Any other comments? All right, then this meeting's adjourned.
thank you.